Hey wrestling fans, welcome to another episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic for December 6th, 2016. I'm Lance Brock, and today I'm being joined by Blake Acumen. Welcome to 360 Wrestling Fanatic.
Thanks for having me, man. What's up?
And now, I've interviewed you once before on Clash Wrestling 360, but this is your first time on here, and that's the first time I met you, actually, was...
Yeah, that was the first Clash show I went to.
Was back in May, and what I want to know is, when did you first get into the wrestling business? When did you first start training?
I believe it was maybe June of last year. There was a school from Steve Rivera who runs Pro Wrestling All-Stars. Pro Wrestling All-Stars started up this school where the main four guys were Rod Street, the Great Akuma, Nate Madsen, and Briar Wellington. And they kind of all bonded together, put together this school, and Mondays through Thursdays we were training. So from June till about maybe November, I was training for about 5 months.
And what was the first promotion that you worked a match for?
Oh, it was Pro Wrestling All-Stars, the school associated with the promotion.
And on that Clash show that I mentioned, there was also, before the show, Jamie Noble was there to do a seminar.
Yeah.
And then recently for DSW, I know you're in one with Robbie E. from TNA.
Yep.
And I'm sure that's a good experience to be able to learn from veterans in the business.
Yeah, it's definitely a positive for veterans and people that have been on TV and been on TV for years at that. Come to Detroit and they have all this advice about things you never really thought about. They told you not to think like a wrestler, but to think like a fighter sometimes. Sometimes guys give you different ways of doing certain things just to stand out, especially when, I'm a smaller guy. I'm under 6 feet tall. I'm under 200 pounds. I'm considered a cruiserweight. So we have to stand out with certain things, maybe our hair, the way we talk, the way we fight, and certain things. It's all about standing out and being different from everybody else to separate yourself from the pack. And that's what we're pretty much talking in these seminars.
So far, you haven't really been working that long of a time, but what have you learned the most so far in your career?
Certainly, as a matter of fact, I'll quote Chris Hero. He says, if you expect everything, or if you expect the world to be given to you, you'll get nothing. But if you go into something, if you go into a venture not expecting anything positive, you'll probably get exactly what you want. And I use my first year in pro wrestling as an example of that. I'm a small African-American male. I was never supposed to even be a pro wrestler, and I got here. I was never supposed to have my first match, and I got there. And, as you know, probably recently, I was never even supposed to, be in Ring of Honor at any point. And in my first year, I got there just last month, or 2 months ago now. But if you expect everything, it'll probably not happen. So if you don't expect anything, you just keep working hard, you'll probably get what you want.
Now, you mentioned Amazing Nate Madsen. I've interviewed him quite a few times, and I think he's definitely one of the best wrestlers Michigan has ever had. So, what are your thoughts on him?
Your thoughts are certainly modest. I think Amazing Nate Madsen is the Michigan legend I look up to. I mean, aside from the fact that he trained me, there's nobody I watch more closely than Nate. Everything I've ever done in the wrestling business is probably to impress him. Because I always ask for his feedback. I always ask, hey, if you've seen me do this, what do you think about it? What should I change? What should I do here? Do I add this? Do I take away from this? Everything I do is probably to impress him or get him talking about it in some sort of fashion.
Do you prefer working as a heel or a babyface?
To me, it doesn't matter, heel, babyface. I prefer working. Just as simple as it sounds. I prefer, I prefer getting a reaction from the fans. I prefer prefer getting a reaction. I prefer punching somebody in the face or kicking somebody in the head, whether it's as a heel to get people pissed off or as a baby to get people behind me.
Now, to go back just about a couple weeks ago at Detroit Style Wrestling, you were involved in the Thanksgiving Throwdown, dressed up as Davy Crockett. So, how fun was that?
That was incredibly fun. It definitely caught people by surprise, and certainly in my eyes, because it's weird to say a segment is the main event, but I was in a segment that was the main event, which led to a match that ended up being the main event. So I was certainly happy about that. But it was certainly weird. The bad mother truckers or badass mother truckers brought me out as Davy Crockett, which is already funny. And then I have the blonde hair, so after it's all over, El Ridicule also grabs the hat thing and says you're free, so it's definitely uncomfortable for people. And then I run around the ring and in my blonde hair and go to the back. It was hilariously funny for me.
Now, you did that. Are you a fan of comedy in wrestling?
Absolutely. I think anything that doesn't include comedy at some point probably isn't going to last too long. You can't be serious all the time. People need that comic relief. You need that, that was good at the end of everything. I mean, if it's not comedy related, it's probably not going to last long.
Now, what has been your toughest match, you would say, since you've started?
Well, define toughest.
I mean, like, your toughest opponent, I guess you could say.
Well, I gotta say the match I did at Ring of Honor. It was, first of all, Punisher Martinez and BJ Whitmer, who I watched since I was a kid. Punisher Martinez is, I don't know if he's new, but he's certainly new to Ring of Honor. And he's 6'7", almost like pushing 280 pounds. And that he, along with BJ Whitmer, who's also like well over 250 pounds, those men hit so hard. And I've had a problem with my hip ever since that match, and that's 2 months ago maybe. So that's the lasting effect of a little bit of promotion I got in Ring of Honor. But it was certainly worth it. I've never been in so much pain after a match. I was certainly excited. So, when your adrenaline's going, you don't really feel it. And then you get home and the adrenaline wears off and you're around stuff and you're like, oh, Jesus, I can't move.
Now, Ring of Honor is a worldwide promotion. Were you nervous at all working for them for the first time?
Absolutely. But then again, I'm nervous. Despite the promotion, every promotion I've worked for is a wrestling promotion. Every promotion I've worked for, honestly, whether it's new or whether I've worked for them before, I'm always nervous. I'm always nervous because I don't know how the fans are going to receive me. I don't know what my opponent is thinking. I don't know what he's going to do. Sometimes I don't know what I'm going to do. You're always nervous before you walk through that curtain or from when you walk from the back. It's nerve-wracking. It's, adrenaline going. It's all these different thoughts of what could go wrong and what you want to do out there and what you want the people to receive you as. And, yeah, I'm always nervous, but certainly before that night, because that night, yeah, Jesus, it's something that you can watch back and, yeah, I don't know how to receive it, I think.
And to go back to that weekend a couple weeks ago, it was pretty busy for you. I want to say you worked 4 matches, was it? Including the Thanksgiving Throwdown.
I believe so, yeah. Let me think back. When did I do that?
Because I know you worked DSW, then on the same night you worked Clash and TWA, and at Clash you had 2 matches.
1, 2... Oh, no, I had 5 matches.
Oh.
Okay, so that Friday was DSW. I wrestled Elvin Nino, who is debuted, and he's a luchador. The next night, I worked TWA first, where I faced a guy that I faced before, a guy that I actually trained with, Martez, and then I went on to Clash, where I had the first match with, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name.
Sapocha Di Manzo.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I got so many chokeslammed me, so I can't remember his name very well. Then I went on about to do the 5-on-5, where I was, again, slammed right on my head by a power bomb, so I'm not remembering very well who did that. Let's see the pictures later. And then that Sunday, okay, I forgot what I did that Sunday, but I'm sure I'll have full matches that weekend.
And this past weekend, you worked for Metro Pro Wrestling, correct?
Yes.
And how was that like?
Wonderful. I faced a very good friend of mine in Andrew Lee, who a lot of people sell short, actually. A lot of people sell him short because he's small, and I know what it's like to be small, and it's not really something to sell short, honestly. We're both friends. You were both, good guys in the eyes of the crowd. He has his Pokemon thing. I am an educated man who grades people, so that's always fun. The fans were certainly behind us both. They didn't want a winner because they didn't want a loser. But, eventually somebody has to lose, and it was me. So, but kudos to him.
And you mentioned how you're not the biggest guy in the world. So did you grow up looking up to guys like Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Chavo Guerrero, Billy Kidman?
Absolutely. Oh my God. The Radicals, when they came to WWF, where it was Eddie, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, friggin' Christopher Noir. I don't know if I can say that.
That's fine.
But absolutely. While Eddie was in WCW, he was like the guy I watched in WCW because I didn't watch it that often, except when he was on. As far as my childhood hero, it was Shawn Michaels, who, by no means was a small guy, but it was certainly smaller than everybody around him. Like, what was he, 6 feet, maybe 220 pounds?
Yeah.
Big person, but smaller than everybody else. The way he would fly around the ring and duck things and, just evade and punch and go, and everything about him was just everything I thought wrestling was all about. From the fighting, to the courage, to the emotion, to the way he dressed, from the way he walked, everything. And he represented what I thought pro wrestling was all about.
And now,
certainly, I guess you could say the same thing about Amazing Nate Madsen, but,
Now, there's a match I've been thinking of. It may happen one day, you never know. How about Blake Acumen versus AJ Styles?
Jesus, I've actually, not to be a nerd or anything, but before I got into the business, quote-unquote business, when I was maybe 19 years old, I bought my first pair of tights and wrote a storyline while AJ Styles was in Ring of Honor of how the match would come about. It was the phenomenal one in AJ Styles versus the pretentious one in Blake Acumen. That's how bad I wanted that match.
You never know. Maybe that'll happen one day.
I hope so. I hope he's still wrestling by the time I get there.
And just to close off, it's almost the end of 2016, and what does 2017 have in store for Blake Acumen?
What does it have in store? Well, I know one thing for sure. Beyond anything else, I will have Blake Acumen t-shirts. I don't know what it's going to say on them, but I don't know. I don't know what's in store right now. I don't like to look towards the future right now because it's like I'm having such a good time not paying attention to the future, so just let things fall in my lap. I don't really know what it holds, but whoever's in my way are going to get flips, they're going to get fists, and they're going to get super kicks. So flips, fists, and super kicks are what you can look forward to in 2017.
And that's all for this interview, but we'll be right back in just a little bit for a part 2.